studio based in Bangalore, and I'm the founder there. Our core philosophy is building better products shouldn't take forever. We work with different kind of companies from small to large, and 40 plus different partners. We work with them to launch products from vision documents or revamp entire product experience. But the key is how can we move faster, right? So that's what we believe in and work on. Talking about Digilocker, I'm sure everybody who's been in India, many of you would have heard the project or used the app on your own. But if you have not heard about it, just to give you a brief of what the project is, it's a mobile app by MeitY, which is Ministry of Information Technology in India, and NEGD, which is National E-Governance Division, under the Digital India Initiative. The whole idea is how can we make our entire documents paperless, whether it's your driving license, your ID cards, and hundreds of other certificates. I think as of now, we have about 500 plus different kind of documents on the product. And it could potentially be a replacement for doing your KYC or sharing your documents on any product that we use. So that's the scale and potential impact of this project. When we started the project, maybe about 6 months, I think 6 to 7 months back, they had 3.7 crore documents, 3.5 million users, 247 issuers. And the fun part about this project is it started in a very interesting situation. And it won't be wrong to say that the project started actually at Bangalore International Airport. And before we get to the case study, I'll just tell you a bit about what happened there and how it started. So I was there at the airport to board a flight to Delhi for a meeting. And I was just about to enter the security gates there at the airport entrance. And I realized that I missed my wallet there. In 15 minutes, my check-in counters were about to close. And I was just clueless about what do I do, which is where somebody walked up to me and said, why don't you download Digilocker app and get your ID cards there? I would have missed the flight. I was worrying about what do I do next? Do I go back home? How do I make up for the meeting? And somebody told me about this app at that point of time. And I think it was about sometime last year when this happened. And not many people knew about this app at that point of time. It was a big hassle for me to get the documents. Getting the app onboarded, getting my documents in was a big pain. But nevertheless, I was super grateful that I could take my flight just because I missed some document home. And it should not mean that I can't go through my flight and go abroad. So that was great. And I was feeling so grateful that this app was a savior for me. And which is when I wrote to the Digilocker team that, you know, you guys are doing something amazing. This can be life-changing for a lot of us in India. Why don't we make it better? It's quite painful right now. The onboarding is painful. It took me 10 minutes to juggle with it just to get my documents. And the team was super interested. And that's how this project ended up happening. Right? So also, another thing is that as a designer, sometimes you get to that point in your career where you want to do something beyond helping businesses make profits. Yeah, it's good to make apps that are simpler for users, make their lives better. But can we actually create an impact that is beyond just helping companies make more money? I'm not saying there's anything bad in that, and that's a great job all of us are doing. But I was at that point where I was keen to say, can we contribute to making an impact beyond making money? It was also a project with a very different set of constraints. It was not a exciting startup with an amazing product team or even a large company which has unlimited time and who's keen on design. It was a very different working environment where we are working with a government body. And there were many other challenges around. So the first big challenge we had, which was something that I had not personally worked on before, how do you profile and understand 35 million users? We had everybody, anybody above 18 was a user, somebody living in metros to staying in villages, from rich to poor, people who can speak different languages. How do you profile users like that? It's almost impossible, right? You have everybody is a user. The second big thing was we were working with a government team. And like many of us would have already known, looking at government products, not just in India, but across the world, there is a big gap. On one side, we have these amazing apps, even in India, which are matching design standards of the valley, whether it's food tech or EdTech. There's so many amazing applications coming out of India which are setting new standards. And other extreme are these government tech products which are being used by millions of people, but the state of product experience is really bad. And the reason for that is that design is still not a part of the process of building an app there, right? So working with a team that doesn't understand how you can add value is the biggest challenge to begin to start with for a designer, right? So that was one thing. And also what ends up making a great product experience is great tech. You need to have good teams that can do all the fine interactions we do, have smooth workflows and that experience. And even that was a constraint. So we started a project with constraints that we had never worked before. But a question in the mind was that can we make this product better in a couple of weeks rather than spending months? That was a big question that with which we were thinking about what's the right process we use, how do we go about it, and that's where we came up with an idea that we should run design sprints with them, and we think only that could have made it possible. And once I talk through the rest of the case study and walk you through what actually happened, you know why this was something which was the right process, perhaps for a project of such complexity and other environmental factors like the team, the time period, belief in design, and stuff like that. So design sprints is a tested process. It's a Google venture. It's a process that came up in Google Ventures a couple of years back in the Valley, and now all the unicorn startups, and it's a big design process, especially in the US and Europe, and in India it's picking up, and perhaps we are the first ones to start doing it. But design sprints is a process which is super fast intense. In a week, you go from a problem to creating a prototype and testing it. And we thought that this is something that we should run with this team. And now bringing a process that is so fast and rapid, that is used by best product teams in the Valley, and taking that to a government team was again a challenge of its own, right? So let's jump right into what happened in the entire process. So it was a 4-week process, and I'll talk you through what we did in every single week of the process and what was the final outcome. Let's start with the first thing, which is week 0, even before we get started into running a design sprint. What we do here is pre-sprint research. It includes stakeholder interviews, app store reviews, news articles, and YouTube videos. I'll go more deeper into what that means. Our first thought would be in a project of such complexity, even before you can touch something or if you want to come up with some design changes, it might need months of research. But at Parallel, we believe that sometimes you don't need that. There are other ways to get deep insights very quickly and then run rapid experiments to validate whether what we've done is the right thing, right? So let's see what happened. We jump right into the App Store reviews. And when we start there, you have the key insights coming there. Like, let's look at this review. And this is all before we did the work. I'm sure there might be some like that even now, but just to give you a context of where we started, there were comments like the worst product design ever. People were understanding that it's an app to upload your own documents. Even when we look at YouTube, there are tons of videos with 900K plus views, which are just explaining people how to use the app. And that indicates the intensity of the problem and why there was a severe need for a revamp and simplification in the process. If somebody is creating videos with 900 plus views just to understand how to use, that means the problem is deep. And we have hints to what that problem is in these videos, in these App Store reviews. And even the media was getting it right. So firstly, Digilocker is not an app to upload documents primarily. It's an app to get your verified documents from the source, which is equal to your original document. And that's mandated as per IT Act. But if you look at these observations, people are talking about uploading their documents, linking how to link Aadhaar is a question, and again, uploading documents. So these are massive issues where there were, even the media was getting what the product is doing wrong. There were huge amount of tutorials to explain the product, which was indicating that it's super complex. And these were 3 key things that we noticed in our conversations with stakeholders and the secondary research we did. The first thing we realized is there was almost a 60% drop off in the onboarding process. Only 40% of the people who download the app were able to get to their first, the first document that they have, and many others were just dropping off. Actually, the 30-day retention was even worse. It was just 18%, and I'll come to that later. So only 18% of people were retaining the app at the end of a 30-day cycle. And the primary reason for that was that they were not comfortable with the entire onboarding process. They were misunderstanding an app as a free storage app. They thought it's like another Dropbox where I can upload my own documents and just use that as a free storage. And the reason behind that was Digilocker team gave people 1 GB of free storage. That was just a side feature for people, but there was so much misunderstanding because nothing like this exists. We don't have parallels around here where uh, an app where you can fetch original documents is a common thing, right? So there was massive misunderstanding in the product. Most people thought it's only for your ID cards. You can get your Aadhaar, driving license, passport. But the reality is that the product had actually, as of now, today, it has 585 issuers and 417 different document types from all sort of certificates, insurance policies, RC, marriage certificates, anything that you name it, all of them are available and equal to original documents valid as per ID Act. But people did not understand that. So let's jump right into the design process. This is the second week of our engagement and week one of actual design work, where we ran a design sprint. Our team flew down to Delhi to run this design sprints with the team. And the first thing, and these are pre-COVID times, before we actually moved to running the design sprints virtually, and we have summits like this. So what happens in that situation is the space is super important. The setup is important, where you bring a team together to get into that mind space where they can actually think fresh, where they are cut off from their biases and their day-to-day environments. And this was one big challenge and a difficulty for us to convince the government team to run an official design process outside at a co-working space in Gurgaon. That was the first big thing. And then we had the right team in the process. So we had right from the director, the product managers, technology, partnerships, customer success. Representatives of all these functions were part of the process, which makes it a very holistic team, which can bring in all the different perspectives. And that's where the challenge starts, where we start bringing out observations from everybody to get to the right problem statement. The work starts by bringing out the perspectives of each person again. We already had stakeholder conversations with people, bringing them out and writing. All of us and many of people from the design side are familiar with how might please, which is a very important and good starting step for every project to list down problems and prioritize. And that's exactly what we did here. We listed down all the how might be statements of hundreds of problems that the team brought out, and then went through a rigorous prioritization process. Because doing good product strategy, the first thing is that how do we prioritize problems with deep consideration? And that's exactly what we did here. And we had four big how might be's that came in here, which were very similar to the points I mentioned to you earlier. How do we convey users that Digilocker is about fetching documents and not about uploading? How do we get people to link their Aadhaar, because that was very important, otherwise they won't get their documents? How do we get them to understand the real value of documents and differentiate between a verified and a unverified document? We also wrote down a 2-year goal. Again, for a team like this, and typically most large corporations, it's very rarely where a team has a very clear roadmap for the product. Helping the team do that by writing a 2-year goal, and also writing down questions like, why are we running this exercise? Even before we get to the solutions or start solving, many times as designers, uh, we try and solve everything, but then it just takes forever to design and much longer to implement. So one key step in at the beginning of the design sprint itself was to how do we to solve, and then how do we define, how are we going to measure whether the design process was successful or not, right? This is where we define these four questions you can see here. Can we get users to understand the product purpose? Can we convey users that Digilocker is about original issued documents and not uploaded documents? Can we have a 45-second sign up? So the first time I did my sign up at the airport, it took me about 10 odd minutes to get my document, but can we get that down to 45 seconds? Can we make the app super intuitive for a layman? Again, we have a very broad audience. We can't afford to have the app complex enough, have a heavy onboarding process, right? So these were things that we started at the first step. We went on to create mapping the broad user journey. How are people discovering the product? How are they learning about it? How are they using it? What are the key things that they're doing? And then what is their objectives? And map all our observations, the how might questions, the sprint questions on the challenge, where we have a very clear vision of what part of the user journey the problem is actually happening, right? So that's what we did. And after that, we jumped right into solutions. So the first part of the day in this, on the day one of the sprint was about defining problems with the how might we user interview, sorry, stakeholder interviews, writing down questions to validate, and also mapping the challenge. And the second part, we jump right into creating solutions. And one thing that we believe very strongly at Parallel is everyone is a designer. And this is a great philosophy to get everybody in the team on board and not have those alignment challenges and solutions, or have half-baked solutions which are not bringing everybody's perspective. Can we make things comfortable enough for everybody to be a designer and come up with solutions? And that's what we did right here. And this was a very difficult one. I had my own skepticism here, where can we get a government team to sketch and come up with solutions? Can we get them to come up with interesting ideas and solve problems? But believe me, it was fun. They were no less than a startup team in terms of coming up with solutions. It was all about making it, reducing the barrier for them to do so and making it interesting. And everybody loved the entire process. And there were some amazing sketches that the team came up with. So these are some examples of the sketches that came up from a overall sprint team, which is a combination of designers from Parallel and also the team at Digilocker. They also went through different voting methodologies to identify all the best ideas that were actually having potential to solve the problems that we came up with. And after that, on the second day, we narrowed down to the best ideas among 8 to 9 different sketches that we had, which had potential to solve the problems that we started out to be, which was about explainability, about ease of use, onboarding, all these problems. We have some very interesting solutions. And the best part is some of the most amazing solutions came up from the team at Digilocker itself. And that's something that happens in every design sprint we run. It's just about getting the right stakeholders to share their ideas. They always have some very interesting insights and ideas. And that's when we started preparing for our first experiment, which is the prototype that's going to happen the next day. And we created a user test flow and a very clear storyboard of the entire process there. And on day 3, in one day, we had the first round of prototypes ready for testing. And there were very specific things that we were trying to solve for. So sometimes the solutions are not that difficult. You just need to be able to find the right insights and come up with right solutions. For example, we bought in the idea that it was these were original documents right up front. We removed the sign-up process until a user has gone through and got a hang of what can I do in this product. So like you can see, I can see here all the different kind of documents you can get, browse through it, learn more about it, see how many documents are there, even see some sample cards, and I'll show you that later in this. Even before I have given my email ID or phone number or even Aadhaar to sign up on the product, this was our thought to bring in more explainability and see how we can educate users even before we get through the sign-up process. This is a very interesting question, and I'll answer actually some of them together as we go ahead. Keep the questions coming in. There are some very interesting learnings here. I'm happy to answer them after I finish the entire presentation. Okay, I think I missed a slide, but we also changed the auth process, and somehow those slides are missing here. This was a big one again. We changed the entire onboarding process. So what was happening in the onboarding process is using Aadhaar number and verifying that is something that's not mandatory as per a Supreme Court regulation. So no product can make Aadhaar number mandatory to sign up on a product. But at the same time, until now, hopefully this is going to change very soon with the new account aggregators that are coming in. But until now, Aadhaar OTP verification was the only way for somebody to verify that you're actually the person whom you're claiming to be. And before giving access to the original documents of people to someone on an app, it was very important to get the authorization done, which is where it was a tricky situation. One, you can't make it mandatory because it's legally not right to give it as the only option. Second, you have to do that to get onboarded and start using the app properly and fetch the original documents. I'm somehow missing that screen, and I'll show you that further. What we did is we made Aadhaar as the default or Aadhaar mobile, and we educated people on why is it needed. So there was a bit of explainability missing on why actually we are asking for Aadhaar number during onboarding. Because the first reaction of a user would be, why are you asking me something so personal, right? I don't want to share an Aadhaar number with somebody until it's mandatory for me, right? So educating users on why their authentication is important is something that we change in the auth process, and I'll show you the revised designs for that next. The other thing that we did is, this was a small one, but a very big impact right now, and it's live on the app as of now. We brought in a small did you know section. So wherever you're fetching any document, or even before you're done with seeing the sample documents, we added a tiny did you know section where we said, okay, did you know that this driving license is a valid ID card in Indian Railways? Or and added that again at the bottom of the card here as well. Uh, and then we jumped right into running a user test next day. We had on day 4 and 5, we tested the products with 5 different users, right from millennials like us, and people in the 20s and early 30s who are staying in cities like Bangalore, to testing it with a security guard, to a housemate, just getting a hang of how much are they getting in terms of a product. Again, I'm not showing you mock-ups which are multilingual, but the idea was testing it with different kinds of users in that week itself. So we are on fifth day of the process, and we already have some insights coming in from the users at this stage. So let me actually tell you a bit more about this. Uh, okay. So what happened when we did the first testing, and the reason for going to users as soon as possible, sometimes we feel as designers that we need to make the product perfect before we show it to somebody. In fact, often in my own company and team, we have seen that we don't even like showing our work in progress work to people because we know it's not perfect. But what we believe is that the faster you get to users, even if it's raw, even if it's not something that's polished. So if you look at this prototype, it's not something super polished. It was just done in one day to cover some key ideas. But the kind of insights that we gain are amazing. You get a sense that are you in the right direction or are you not? And we can do much faster, rapid iterations from there onward. So we had some very interesting insights that which you can read on my slide. The app is a lifesaver, and that is the praise of the app, not of the design. But uh, uh, okay, people already started liking the design. They felt like it's easy to use just by changing the entire onboarding process and focusing on explainability. So tests just not help us identify where the problem exists, but also the why of the problem. So when you run these extensive user interviews or user tests with people, which are focused on identifying have we been managed to solve specific problems with potential users, it helps us understand what is working and what's not working. And if whatever is not working, why is that not working? What is the psyche of the user where something is breaking and not catering to their. So in 1 week, we went from discovering and aligning on the problems to testing a clickable prototype with real users. But what happens is every time we run this process and many other design processes that we don't get it right the first time, which is why it's very important to get to that stage really fast, get some insights, and then do an iteration. Even in this case, although many things worked, there were many things which also were broken and did not work so well. So the second week, iteration week, started by regrouping and assessing what worked and what did not work from the user test insights. We had these greens and reds, which are, I'm just showing a small part of the test, but these are indicating insights that came in terms of what was working, and there were many things that were breaking. Um, and these are the negative ones, which is very important as a designer to also acknowledge and highlight what was breaking. So we cracked the sign up well, and people said that the sign up was straightforward. They could understand what the product was. However, the rest of app was confusing. They were not very happy with the rest of the app experience. It was still not there. People were confused when they saw uploaded documents. What is the difference between a fetched and uploaded documents? There was still some ambiguity around there, and the search results were not as expected. So these were some of the things that we dive deeper into in the iteration week and try to take the prototype further. We define new hub IPs to solve and create new sketches that will solve the challenges that came up in the previous week. And these are the prototypes that we did in the second round, which is the iteration sprint. Again, this time we spent 2 to 3 days just doing these prototypes. So and we try to take it to a reasonably high fidelity in a very short amount of time. And I'll talk you through some key highlights of the second round of prototypes. So one key principle that we had in the second round was explainability over uninformed sign up. Like I mentioned this in the previous week also, but it was much more detailed and done much better this time. So the moment you get on board, we are striking chord with the users, telling them that 35 million users Digilocker, establishing some credibility, establishing trust there, giving them access to all the sample documents that they can get. So they can click on the preview here, look at this sample, and also look at this did you know, which is even before the user has signed up, they're getting a hang of what is my expectation on this product, how does it work, what kind of documents do I get, previewing them, understanding them, seeing samples, knowing through did you know what can I do with it, was focusing on bringing explainability over every other app where we just onboard. And the first thing we have to do is sign up many times even before having enough context. There are other reasons why everybody does that. So people do it for increasing conversions, not letting a user drop off. But in this case, it is a government tech app. We didn't have to go with the constraints or the conventions that are followed in other products, right? Other commercial products where there is a huge emphasis of getting the user signed up as early as possible. We didn't have that obligation. We're trying to offer a service on behalf of the government, and making sure citizens understand that is way more important than just somehow getting their personal access details and getting them to join in on the app, right? So that was first thing. The second thing is we highlighted everything that was important. So if you can see here, we made this section very prominent. Where can I use Digilocker? Because this was a question that was coming in again and again on what can I do with it? How does it help? Is it original? Is it accepted? So we answered all those questions by having this section here called Where can I use Digilocker? And we had many different things you can do with the product very clearly out here. And every other thing that was important, how many original documents are there, how many issuers are there. And you might see varying numbers at some places about the issuers and documents because it's been growing very fast and the numbers are growing by the day. Uh, we're also, again, like I mentioned earlier, establishing validity, use, and credibility everywhere, not by making it a showstopper for people, but doing small nudges and bringing it out. So we have here this mentioned, even once the user onboards, we have a personalized message and we're mentioning Digilocker issued documents are at par with original documents. So we're trying to solve that problem of credibility through these small nudges in the entire journey. We're using copy to bring transparency and set expectations. So this is the key highlight I was telling you, which came up in the previous week, and we enhanced it a lot more here. So when we are asking somebody for their Aadhaar number, we are mentioning very clearly, Digilocker uses Aadhaar OTP implementation to verify users and fetch original documents. And when you click on a don't want to use Aadhaar option, you go through that mobile number workflow. Again, we are telling you, you have this option. But if you do this, you won't be able to get your original documents until you do your Aadhaar OTP. So there was a lot of focus on transparency, setting expectations, and educating users again here. Okay, I think I have a note that we have 5 minutes left, so I'll just quickly wrap up and answer one or two questions that we have here. In context callouts, where we are just mentioning, did you know here? And something very unusual, we're using friction to deter product misuse. So there was a product feature of free storage where users were uploading their music and general random files. This was just a space given to people to upload their documents. And it was being heavily misused and becoming a nightmare for the team to manage tech scaling for that, where people were uploading music and all sorts of random stuff on this feature. And we added a bit of friction here, where before you upload a document, you just have to choose a document type. And that friction is, again, this feature is perhaps going to be live very soon, but this friction was intended to deter product misuse. And after the second round of prototyping, we do one more testing. This time it's to get more confidence before we start development. And this is what the users said. It was very successful. All the key problems were solved. People were very happy with it. And week 3, we just do a handoff to the dev team to start developing the product. We did a quick handoff with a summary of all the insights that came up in the session. the most gratifying part, which is the statistics that we got just now, like another, I think last 2 weeks back, we got the stats of how the product has evolved in the last 6 months after the team has implemented the solutions from the design sprint. We had a hopping 280% increase in 30-day retention, right from 18% to 58%. And we have never heard these kind of statistics in any product in terms of increase in product retention, right from 18% 30-day retention to 58% 30-day retention because of the changes that we did through the design sprint. Many other interesting insights and statistics also came along. And as a designer, it's super gratifying to seeing your impact of the work that you've done, especially for users at that large scale. Another thing, which is something that's never heard of, Digilocker was the first app in the iOS top charts. And that is already at a stage where all the solutions are not implemented. 70%, 60% things are implemented, and many things are yet to go. It was amazing to see that it was the first app in the top iOS charts, which is often dominated by the most funded and amazing companies with great design teams. We managed to get here with Digilocker. And lastly, there was a tweet thread from Amit Ranjan, who was previously the co-founder at SlideShare, and then ended up playing a key role in building Digilocker, where he really appreciated that work we did, and also highlighted it how it's difficult to pull off something like this, especially in a government setup, right? And the other quote is that we didn't help people catch the fish, but also teaching them how to catch the fish. So the product, this exercise didn't just give the product a better design, but made a government team embrace product thinking and design, which was, I think, far bigger in terms of the impact that I would have liked to have than just creating a set of product streams that make it better. And it's all because we worked with them hands-on. They were the designers of the product along with us. So my key takeaway and last thing in the session is that I was very skeptic. How do you design with large organizations, big teams, hierarchies where alignments are a problem? But now what I believe is with a strong process and focus on outcomes, it's possible to build better products with any organization, even with governments. And actually working with many other interesting government products, which you might see soon. It's kind of become a passion to go and create an impact where it's the most difficult. So you might be seeing some very interesting stuff on other government tech soon. And that's about it. Thank you so much. You can reach out to me here if you have any other questions. If you want to know more about it, we have a detailed case study available on our website, parallelhq.com, where you can read the project case study in detail, and feel free to reach out to me for any questions. And just one question came in, which I would want to answer if I have a minute. Shivani, do I have a minute to answer? Yeah.
Sure, sir.
So that question is, how did we go about educating everybody about the design process before we began? This is a very good question. Often teams don't believe in or understand the design process. But if we can focus on communicating the design process in terms of outcomes, companies and product teams are always interested in, okay, you have a great process that you go out and do research and you come up with different variations, and then you do user tests. But how does it help? And often as designers, we always focus on communicating the process steps and the activities rather than focusing on the business outcomes of that. So the way we did that and the way we do it every time is to focus on why the process that we want to use is helpful. How does it create value? How will it solve problems? And sometimes how will it make the stakeholders look good, right? You need to consider what is in it for them to work with you on this process, and demonstrate that maybe through a small, or just focusing on the business impact points rather than focusing on the general process. So yeah, I think that's about it. Hope you enjoyed the session. Happy to answer any questions. I'll be around in the chat as well if there is that option, and you can ask me here. You can reach out to me on my email or website, and hope it was helpful. Thank you so much, and really enjoyed presenting this case study to all of you.
Thank you, Mr. Dhanwani. Thank you so much for spending your valuable time with us. And thank you everyone for joining us today. And please stay tuned for other interesting sessions that we have planned for